Well, hey guys, it's Dr. Drake 63 here today, and thanks for joining me. You know, ever since I was a kid, I've been completely infatuated with the Walther Pp series of pistols. Originally dating back to the late 1920s with the invention of the PP, later the PPK, and basically that was just a shorter barrel, shorter grip version, a smaller version, if you will, of the PP. We all know James Bond carried the Walther PPK. And those of you who wonder how firearms myths get started, you might recall in Dr. No, where M confiscated, if you will, took the Beretta 32 that Bond was carrying under the premise that it jammed and was getting agents killed. I suppose that'd be the first myth, is that the Walther will not jam. That's not true. And replaced it with the Walther PPK, which according to him was stopping power like a brick through a plate glass window. They're both the same caliber, 32 ACP. The gun we're going to talk about today is this guy right here, which is a Walther PP. It is chambered in 32 ACP, okay? It was manufactured actually in France by the Manhurin manufacturing company, and then they were proof stamped back in Germany in Ulm. But because of things that were going on with disarmament after the war and the need to keep production going, the Walther company did not make Walthers in Germany again until the 80s, actually. So, going to talk about this today. Kind of interesting. The first pistol, I should say, that I ever owned was a replica, a non-working, all-metal Walther PPK that I had got as a Christmas present in 1976. And somewhere during that time, that year, somebody decided that they needed it worse than I did, so it was stolen from me. So I've been without that for a long time. I've been looking at Walther PPKs forever. Obviously, you know, I've bought a lot of firearms over the years, and but I didn't like the PPK size relative to my hands. Well, the PP ends up being just about perfect. You can see right here that with that extension, which is the way these magazines were made, I can grip this with all three fingers, and that's just perfect for me. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about proof stampings a little bit. We're going to speculate on this particular firearm. There's so many different proof markings. There's so many different versions, so many different places these went before they were imported, so forth and so on. I'm going to visit that a little bit, and of course we're going to look inside and do some preliminary shooting. So I hope you enjoy. This is Dr. Drake 63 saying, stay tuned. Now, maybe it's just me, but I've always kind of thought that Walther's logo looked kind of carnival-like, circus-like, almost cartoonish. And I've never really liked the big billboard taking up the whole side of a slide thing that you've seen other companies do as well. But I've gotten used to it. And it's a gun that I've definitely, in my mind, linked to officers in the German military, World War II, as well as obviously James Bond, the PPK version, that is. But it's a sleek design. It's ahead of its time. It's been copied often, and that's the greatest form of flattery, is when somebody copies your designs. So I find it interesting that, at least in the German military, the higher your rank, the smaller your pistol. And you found that these PPs and PPKs were very popular among officers. A lot of them purchased their own. And compare that to what the U.S. thought was an appropriate sidearm. And this was for everybody, pretty much. I mean, we know Patton carried a .357 Magnum and stuff like that. And some guys carried the Smith & Wesson Victories or whatever, but pretty much everybody that had a sidearm had the .45 caliber. Versus 32 ACP, which just strikes me as odd when you think about the difference in caliber, when you think about the difference of a lot of things. When it came to tanks and artillery, the Germans were the opposite. They didn't believe you ought to have a 70 millimeter cannon sitting on a tank like the Americans did. But anyway, just interesting to kind of compare. By the way, if you wonder where Beretta got the idea for their firearms, you can take a wild guess. Blowback operated. This one's a 380. This is modeled after the PPK with a shorter barrel. The PPs, instead of having the barrel stop there, came out about 0.6 inches further. But if you wonder where that came from, there you go. I think we know where they got their design and their idea, as were the CZ 82 and 83s. I had a CZ 82 at one time. So just talking ballistics for a second. On your left here you have Spear Gold Dot 9mm, 9x19, and that's what we use in our everyday carry, the Glock. And that's a 124 grain projectile, and it's going to be coming out of that Glock around 1150 feet per second. In the middle is the 380 auto, which is what this Beretta fires, and that's a common self-defense round. It's also a 9mm. This is an 80 grain projectile, and it's going to be coming out at about 900 to 1,000 feet per second. Then over here you have a MagTech, pretty standard full metal jacket round in 32 auto, and that's going to be coming out with a 71 grain bullet at about 9 to 950. So, you know, this guy on the left here, to me, that's a significant difference when you're talking about 124 grains and coming out a couple 200-300 feet per second hotter than these other two guys. And you can count on expansion when you get into that scenario. It's good stuff. These two I view as being kind of in similar class. Really, I think all you're really getting with the 380 is a bigger wound channel. It's not really going to penetrate much more. You're looking maybe 12, maybe 13 inches out of that. Here you're looking at 11 or 12 inches, according to ballistics tests. But the thing is once you get into that realm of the 380 going down to the 32 auto, forget about expansion. A lot of guys say these aren't going to expand reliably, so why not use full metal jacket? And my understanding on this 32 auto is you definitely want to just use the FMJ and put a number of rounds where it counts. Obviously, if you hit that central nervous system, which that 11 to 12 inches of penetration is going to get you, then that's going to stop whoever's coming after you. But I would not, given a choice between either of these two firearms, rely on them for self-defense if I had the choice here of a much more powerful round that's going to expand, and I can carry 15 rounds plus one in the chamber, versus looking at these smaller pocket type guns where you're just not going to get that. So, question, would I use this Walther Pp as a self-defense firearm? Well, I would if I was back, you know, in the 40s. I would if I was in the 30s. But given what's available now, no, there's so many better choices. But, you know, it's lethal, without a doubt. So it's 5 degrees today. It's pretty darn cold, but we're going to just put 7 shots through this thing. See how she does. You're going to see that I have a number of failure to feed issues on this one magazine that I brought with me today, which was somewhere between rounds 4 or 5. And, you know, I think that's magazine related. Typically that is. It quit doing it after a while, so who knows. But, you know, nobody likes failures to feed. We think if there's an issue, it is magazine related. We'll find out. Seated in there real good, so that's not an issue. Well, that time it took all 7, so who knows? Let's see how this does two-handed. Problem seems to have been resolved. Now I'm freezing my butt off, so we're going to go inside. Take a little bit closer look at some of the markings on here. First thing you're going to see right here, this was imported by Century Arms, St. Albion, Vermont. Okay, so that's when they first started importing these. Was back in the early 60s. And from checking records, this particular serial number per Walther dates this back to 1960 or 1961. Looking at a few other things on here. This right here is a proof stamp. It happens to match the one that's on the barrel. On the other side here, it's the same thing. It's the eagle with the wings down over the N, which just stands for nitro, which means this is rated for modern black, non-black powder type of gunpowder. So that's that proof stamp. Now, where you get a little bit tricky with some of these, some of them have stamps on the slide that match here. This particular one's stenciled on the inside. And as we mentioned earlier, these firearms were manufactured by the Van Buren Company under contract to Walther. So all of these post-war Walthers going up to about the mid-80s were manufactured in France. And similarly, if you have one that's marked as a Van Buren as opposed to a Walther, it's worth quite a bit more for the exact same pistol, interestingly enough. But let's take this apart and see what it looks like on the inside. Your magazine release is conveniently located right here. And as always, we're going to take the magazine out, make sure that the firearm is clear before we go any further. Now, it's kind of interesting right here. This is a safety / decocker. So you notice that this is a single action, double action trigger, right? So you're going to notice that if I push that down, what it's doing is decocking and putting the safety on at the same time. So that's not actually going to cause the firearm to go off. And then as you see, you can't, doesn't allow you to cock at that point when that safety's in the down position. Also notice how the trigger moves when we cock it back, not all the way, but when we take it out of that position and pull the trigger back, you'll notice that you go all the way back to your single action. While we have it right here, might be interesting to see what kind of pull weight we have with our single action pull. You can see that comes into an unscientific reading just shy of 5 pounds. Okay, it's pretty simple. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is pull the hammer back. Like I said, we've already checked that the firearm is clear. There's no magazine inserted. And if you notice right here on your trigger guard, this comes out just like that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take my finger and hold this open. Okay, and I'm going to pull back on my slide just like that and lift up in the back just enough so that I can pull the slide forward. Okay, And you're going to see right here, this is a blowback design, so everything's based on recoil pushing the spring back. And you just see right here, you have your spring, and it surrounds your barrel. And there you go. Pretty nifty, huh? This works exactly the same, like I said, CZ 82 that I used to own. I mentioned that this was electro stenciled on the inside of this slide, ostensibly to match them at the factory with the frame after they were fitted. Matches that number, okay, 97957. You really got to take a look at it. Imagine how hard it would be to do that stenciling. So I thought that was kind of interesting approach, as opposed to stamping it on the outside of the barrel. Taking a look at the inside here, you can see your firing pin is right here, and it's spring loaded. And there you have it, rounded firing pin at the end. Here is your extractor. It's not a very big one, and I would think that that would be a part, or at least the spring for it, that could be an issue with repeated use. But I thought that that whole scenario with the stenciled number, I mean, what's to say somebody didn't just put another slide on here and stencil that in after the fact to say, hey, they match? Well, I guess the big reason would be that, it's not any kind of collector's item or anything like that. There's no evidence that there was a number stamped on here and it was somehow taken off. You don't see anything like that. I just think they did different things different ways, and there's no evidence that this was used by the police or the Army. My guess is that this was going to be for civilian use from the get-go. But anyway, you can see the sights, and you can see the nice waffle type pattern. Kind of matches my my 52 336 from Marlin. They used to use these waffle patterns for anti-glare. Now they use kind of a matte finish. And there is no type of chamber indicator or anything like that on here. So pretty basic slide. The only thing that really tells you what it is right here. And some point they manufactured these were Walther, and underneath it had a serial number stamped in. Here it's just Karl Walther Waffenfabrik Ulm DO. So again, these were manufactured, we know that much, by Manhurin and sent over. And here's that other proof stamp we looked at. So in pretty good shape. Some of these were made with a real high shine blued look. Some of them were pretty matted down, almost Parkerized. This is kind of in between, and it's showing a little bit of wear, but nothing that ruins its appeal from my perspective. Another thing I want to show you on this, and this is why I thought it might have been a police version until I did some research, is it's got this spring plug that happens to have the lanyard on it, the lanyard loop. Now, this isn't something I'd ever want on a firearm in a million years. And if it was a flush-fitting magazine, it would probably drive me crazy. You can get replacement parts from that, for that, to replace that. I don't know if I'll do that or not. But just again, taking a look at this, get an idea of the way this is made. You can see that's got a nice shiny bright bore, rifling still in place, everything like that. So it looks good. So these grips came off real easily, held on by one screw. We'll take a look now at what the inside of this frame looks like. I mentioned that there was this lanyard loop also acted as a plug for the trigger spring, and there that is right there. And that's simply held in place just by a pin. So I can get a flush mounted one of these if I like. And I question whether this is how they came when they were imported, or if this was something that was added, or if this was something that somebody put in for personal use. Again, I didn't see a lot of evidence that the civilian versions used this kind of thing. Danish motorcycle cops had the lanyards, as did some of the other police functions. So who knows? But there's no markings that indicate that this was ever used by police in any capacity. But you can see it's in pretty good shape. I don't see a lot of evidence of rust and whatnot. I'll probably wipe that down. And here you see that plug is reinstalled. And I'd love to know what these numbers are. Now this is part of the same frame that's stamped. So who knows what that means, but this is part of a forged piece of metal. But you can see your spring is right there, and that's your tension. So if you watch, when this hammer goes back, you can see that depresses the spring, and that's your sear right there. So kind of interesting. Pretty cool, huh? I like simplicity. I also know what to look for if I have some kind of a problem. What to maybe look at fixing. So pretty cool stuff. And then here you see that same proof mark, that nitro acceptance that's on the barrel. Now, interestingly enough, this barrel was all black. Somewhere along the line, somebody thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if this had that polished metal look? And so they did what I consider to be a half-assed job of polishing it down. Who knows why? Were they trying to hide a number, a serial number? I don't know. Who knows if this is all original parts as was advertised to me or not. It functions well, and that's what counts. You can see it has that hollowed out hammer to save weight, ostensibly. Okay, to reassemble, got the spring back on. I'm going to hold down this part of the trigger guard. Just pulling this back, just like that. One of the other things I found interesting is the last 3 digits from the serial number are stenciled into the base of the 2 magazines that came with this firearm, which I thought were kind of weird. Not used to seeing stuff like that, but this particular model is by no means a collector's item. I mean, first of all, it's got the import marking right there. The collector's items really aren't going to have that. There's nothing rare about a 32 ACP Walther Pp. But it's in pretty nice shape, and I like it. And so far, it seems like it functions well in terms of being a good shooter. Who knows the history behind it? Obviously, somebody had it before me. Somebody thought that they should polish that portion of the barrel that's exposed through the ejection port. I wouldn't have done that, but that's just a personal choice. I might do a better job of polishing it now that they started it. I don't think that looks all that good. But overall, it's a nice little firearm. Like I said, would we use this for a concealed carry? You could. I mean, maybe it'll ride with me in my glove box someplace, but there's just so many better options, more powerful options, higher capacity options available to us in the year 2020 or coming up on 2020 anyway. Why would we do this? This would be just for cool factor, and believe me, I'm okay with cool factor. And like I said, this kind of has James Bond, Secret Service kind of cool factor. It definitely does not have show up to a gunfight cool factor, that's for sure. I really kind of like this. I really do. I'm looking forward to doing some shooting for accuracy, and when we do, we'll get back to you on that. But thought we'd take a look at this one today. Appreciate it. This is DR Drake 63 saying, carry on, guys.